This is a very popular word across publishers. You could talk about this later, probably. This helps them, right, to close deals based on pre-decisions, right? That's not happening on real time, but this helps them monetize their inventory. So, any questions so far about programmatic?
Totally over all their heads.
Are you still there?
Okay, so just to summarize that, programmatic is not RTB. It is not a campaign. It is not a strategy. It is one of many faces, was it? Ways to buy.
Exactly.
Yes.
So it's basically a solution.
Solution to buying media. Yeah.
Yes, to buy media online in an automatic way. Right?
Okay.
And when I say it's not a marketing strategy, it doesn't mean that shouldn't be there. Right? It's a strategic solution that should be applied on your marketing plans.
Okay. So, Prab, what's been the adoption of programmatic in India? How's it been so far?
Well,
you can answer it as well.
Oh, I thought I'd been reincarnated as a woman. Well, the adoption has been pretty awesome now. We started programmatic in India back in 2013 with a lot of bang, I would say, and just like everything in the digital world, this is the year of programmatic, this is the year of mobile, this is the year of digital. Programmatic has gone from being 5% of digital spends, now averaging at about 25%. Which has been pretty rapid. And the interesting thing for us is it's largely been driven out of the agency world. It's not coming from the agencies, it's actually coming from advertiser direct. So that's quite interesting. And programmatic was something to do with leftover inventory or remnant inventory at one point in time and was all about performance. We now see programmatic adoption also talking about branding, which has led to something what you mentioned about programmatic direct. The global average of programmatic direct is about 20%. We are seeing that in India, we're already doing about 15% of programmatic buys being programmatic direct. So adoption has gone from being very low, about 5% 2 years back, now crossing about 25% of spends coming on the back of that. So it's been pretty rapid, and again, India is one of the places where if advertisers love the technology, I think they don't wait for the wave to come and they just go and adopt that. So it's been pretty amazing that way.
So why would I do a branding campaign through programmatic versus just a standard buy? What advantages do I get?
So in the previous session, they talked about attribution, and branding guys are typically hung over unique reach, unique impressions. How is my reach in the overall ecosystem? When you're buying or when you're clubbing up a lot of buys through programmatic channel, which includes your direct versus remnant, you're able to do something as global frequency caps, right? So when you start doing global frequency caps, you automatically have a much better control in the way your ads are being shown per user, which in turn leads to a very interesting situation wherein your overall unique reach of the campaign goes up because you're able to control everything down to a single impression on a single user, which you can't do when you're doing, let's say, your usual direct buys as well as your other network buys. So you're able to control all of your buys through a single platform. And with that, for branding guys, since programmatic can touch upon mobile, video, desktop, social, all through a single channel, you are able to control all of that through one element. So it's no longer about just getting lower CPIs, whatever that might be, but it's also about getting lower cost per unique reach, which is a different metric that brand guys normally follow. So that's the reason why we are seeing more adoption of programmatic direct in India. And the good thing is we've got publishers partners who are also participating and coming up front. I know you were there a couple of weeks back when we did the first buy-side, sell-side mixer. And out of that, we have more publishers now saying that, hey guys, this definitely makes a lot of sense. And it takes away a lot of operation headaches for the publisher side as well. So it's the first time we're seeing advertiser community coming forward and also the publisher community coming forward. And Google is kind of the middle platform which is kind of enabling these two things to come together from an automation point of view. So that's the reason why brand guys are adopting it.
Sure. So, how's the adoption been, being from the sort of the advertising side? Do you use programmatic and how?
So I think we've fished around with it for a while, but not really in a big way. And also the way I see programmatic from an advertiser's point of view, I'm sure it has a lot of benefits. One, of course, is, as Diana said, it's automated, but more than that, for me, it's targeted. So it's automated, so it takes off a lot of manual intervention. Of course, we'll optimize it and all of that and somebody would be looking into it. But from the perspective of setting it up, it's very, very easy. That's what it does. But the challenges that I face as an advertiser and why I think the adoption has been only 25, I would say it's a huge leap from 5 to 25, but not why 50, is because of 3 or 4 key reasons that I see as an advertiser. One, the inventory still seems to be very opaque and not transparent to an advertiser. So I do not know whether I'm getting some premium placements or not, whether I am on certain publishers, which I intend to with this campaign. So the way we've used programmatic is as one of the tools of the overall campaign or marketing that you're doing. So put some there and figure out if that's more efficient than the other buying that you're doing, either directly or through ad networks. That's the way you look at it. The other thing has been, so of course, the supply side platform, which is the SSP, has been, I think the initial reaction was very, very lukewarm. And now, as Pravi was saying, that we see more publishers coming up front and saying, we also want to run our inventory on programmatic, but they will still not give you the most premium of this slot and inventory on programmatic. They'll keep that because their belief is that that can fetch them much higher rates than if they were to go through the RTB, which is a subset of programmatic or anything like that. So I think some of those things for advertisers is what is keeping us away in terms of going the whole hog on this.
Okay. So, Gautam, you work on the agency side. How do you approach the whole programmatic piece? Because there's so many different suppliers, technology, systems, everything, and you have the luxury of being the agency, so you can play around. So how do you approach that piece, and how do you kind of package that and take that to client?
So I think there are 2 ways that we try and sell display media, or rather how advertiser buys it, right? So one is, of course, a performance piece that's got a CPI or a CPL or a download or some kind of metric out there which is processed over time. And out there, if the metric is not per se branding, then it's very easy to sell programmatic because it's the most efficient system out there. And you can set your own targets, you can set your own devices, you can set publishers, you can set ad exchanges you want to be part of, all of that stuff. And that's an easy sell, okay? Now coming to the branding part, as mentioned by even our friend here, that a lot of the premium inventory is not really available on programmatic yet. So I don't see TOI's masthead super roadblock yet on it, but maybe over time that would happen. Maybe it makes them make better sense of reducing their sales force and actually using programmatic, embracing that. They may do some analysis that way. But right now, a lot of the inventory is not available. And the kind of ROI that we're seeing from a brand uplift from those buys is quite significant. So we can't go to a client and say, hey, you know what, because it's not programmatic, let's not do it. So we're still living in a world where it's not 100% programmatic, but what we are doing is, we are using DoubleClick, we are using MediaMind to get the attribution right. So we're still having sure that the tracking is done via some serving platform where we can still get a cost per unique reach, where we can still get that deduplication out there. We can still put more science behind the display price. So I think it's moving towards programmatic, and eventually maybe all inventory would be programmatically available. But right now, at least what we are trying to do is get all the benefits of programmatic into a direct buys as well. So that way you get best of both the worlds while it's hybrid, and then as we keep moving, even the clients get more and more used to it and they see the benefits of these kind of reports. So for example, I was talking to Prab recently just now, if you serve your videos through DoubleClick, right, as a platform or any other serving platform, I can get unique reach of my videos, which is really key for any brand marketer. That's how they measure television. I can also get reports of viewability. So I can know, for example, maybe I'm getting a lot of views from a particular publisher, but I don't get completed views. So I don't want to be on that publisher. I could just turn that off. I could be on a publisher that gives me higher completed views. So there are a lot of things that programmatic does which were earlier not in our control. So the way I look at it is like, we used to give business to a network. Today you are the network. So while it is kind of opaque in the beginning, I think the more time you spend on it, you'll realize how transparent it actually is.
Cool. And so you mentioned the quality piece and whether or not there's sort of, am I getting the traffic that I think I'm paying for? And this may be a question for Prab, but how does, say, DoubleClick ensure that the impressions are of quality, they're real, they're not automated, they're viewable, and then that kind of quality metrics kind of built into the whole piece?
I think I'll to answer that question, there are a couple of elements to that. The first part is that to get your inventory listed on exchange is an invite-only process. Unlike other platforms on which you can just go to a website and sign your site up to place ads, an exchange basically requires a qualification process via which the publisher has to disclose what kind of inventory do you plan to monetize through the exchange. DoubleClick has a very stringent process to kind of get the publishers onboarded, and it takes about a good 7 months before you can even see a site listed with AdX. Outside of that, DoubleClick and Google works with the MRC, or the Media Rating Council globally, as well as with IAB, wherein we have worked with the IAB group to have different standards. And we are right now the only guys in the market which can help you track viewability. So we've introduced a measure called Active View, which integrates without putting any additional tags onto your banners, shows you how much of your banner was actually on the screen, what percentage was it viewable, was it below the fold, above the fold, as well as we're integrating in the US with Nielsen and Comscore to give you GRP metrics. So that gives you a good sense of that. The second thing we've done is we've introduced viewability on video. So a lot of times publishers place videos below the fold. So the video might play, but you don't know if the video is actually on the screen and watched by a particular genuine user or not. So that's another thing we've done. We bought a company called Spider.io, which were the world leaders in spam detection, both for impression as well as clicks. A lot of Spider.io technology is already sitting within the programmatic platform that we have to offer. And the good thing is a lot of this information actually goes in the pre-bid state. Before you even bid for that particular impression, the systems are already there which are kind of filtering if that impression is a valid impression or not. And last week we were in Bangalore and we were talking about in a forum around a lot of stuff around mobile, where we're doing mobile app download campaigns. Surprisingly, outside of the usual spam that we see, which is impression spam, click spam, the most latest spam is mobile app download spam. So there are shops in China and there are shops in Daryaganj in India, wherein they have a mobile wall and all one person has to do is basically click, download the app, uninstall it. So we are working on technologies which is so to protect the advertiser from the dark side of the internet. It has been successful to a great extent. But yes, as technology evolved, there would be a bad side to it, and we try to make sure that whatever is coming to our partners is the best that the internet has to offer. So we've done a lot of investments to make sure the impressions and the quality of inventory is the best out there.
Yes, I would like to add something here from the demand side, buying side, where we make sure we work with supply side platforms or with partners such as them. Right, this is what makes us as well trustful. On the other side, I see a lot of stress on the fact of with which publishers are you working or where are you visible. So in the case of RTV real-time bidding especially, this is all more about the user. That's about the user. It's not about the website. It's not about the day of the week, right? These are only factors or parameters that are taking into account any single time we are bidding on one user, not on one publisher, right? Because at the end of the day, one of the advantages of programmatic is that you are able to bid a certain price depending on the value of that user, right? So that's something that should be into account as well.
If you're targeting the user, is there any sort of implications from a privacy perspective, or how does that sort of play out?
I told you, give me all the easy questions. With respect to privacy, Google has very strict norms around PII or personally identifiable information. So at no point in time, any technology player, whether that's Google, whether that's Sociomantic or an agency, you're allowed to capture anything which is unique to your identity. So it can be a phone number, can be a credit card number, can be an email ID, etc. So none of these technologies allow you to have privacy information come through. Markets outside India have got much stricter laws. We don't have those in India. So even as an advertiser, you must state explicitly on your website that, hey guys, we might be dropping a cookie, and we would be using this cookie to kind of reach out to you. And you have an option of opting out. I think as marketers mature in India, we will see that come into play as well. So from a larger privacy point of view, a lot of these technologies remain anonymous to you. So it will only identify you as 123, rather than say, hey, this is Ben, who is at iProspect, lives in Bombay. So it's always anonymized, and I think that's how it's going to be till the time we see more stricter laws coming into India.
Sure. And you mentioned the cookie. Is there other ways of targeting people without a cookie?
Not at the moment. I think in another 6 months or so, you might see some solutions coming around that, given the fact that now people are moving away from desktops. There's a generation of technology adopters which are only starting for mobile and smart tablets. These devices do not have cookies at all. They have a different way of tracking. So as these devices become mass adopted, so to say, you would see the, like it's called in the larger world of Google is, and internet is the death of the cookie. And then the whole way of how things will be tracked and delivered will change for sure. But that's still a couple of quarters away.
Sure. So exciting times ahead. So what is happening in the space of sort of multi-screen retargeting? So let's say I'm on the desktop, and can you hit me, retarget on my mobile? How does that play?
So in the month of January, we launched cross-device tracking. So we can do tracking based on people estimation. Again, it's not a 100% guaranteed model. It can track you today that you may be the same guy who went onto my site, then maybe browsed or searched on a mobile device, and then maybe came back onto a desktop and converted. So there are solutions available, but no solutions is available at 100% accuracy as of now. Every solution works anywhere between 60 to 80% of confidence. To my knowledge, there's no technology right now out there which can do cross-device targeting. Even if they are doing targeting, it's again based on a probabilistic model. And the only guys who've been successful doing something like that is the likes of the Amazon and Facebook, who are in much evolved and who basically have a lot of signed-in information. And so the moment you have signed-in information, you can connect a lot of dots together. But in the absence of signed-in information, when you're around the internet, the larger web, there's no way to track you when you're moving between devices.
I think signed-in information is going to be big, I think, because 140 million of Facebook users are signed in monthly in India. And we're seeing some very, as you said, the probabilistic from 60 has gone up to like 99%, and that's really working in the favor of marketers, because I can tell an example of a client where their mobile spends were about 10%, and using Facebook, at that time the only platform that allowed it, but it's an example, it could be any other programmatic platform. Their spends now are gone up to 70% on mobile from 10% in just 4 months. So that's something which is great. And the other thing is that because there's better attribution, because there's less probability of it being this, you can also choose to keep investing in mobile even if you're not seeing the things of programmatic would be is that you'll be able to see the consumer journey a lot more clearly, which right now is quite fragmented. So you've got a report from AdWords, you've got a report from Facebook, you've got a report from some display campaign you did, you got your email report, but you don't see that one view per se of all the different touch points. And with things like double-click campaign manager and all, you can actually even include your email and organic Facebook posts also into that. So you can actually see the entire journey that the consumer takes. So I think it's some very exciting times. The challenge would, of course, be to implement this, because it's a big shift in terms of mindset at the advertiser level and at the agency level. So the skill set's got to be updated on both sides. So advertisers have got to understand that what is the benefit of tagging a URL and making that go correctly, even though it's an organic post or that's a newsletter link. And agencies have got to figure out how they can upgrade all their skill sets of, say, the SEM guy and the social media guy and the email guy, all doing the same tagging that will ensure that you get one view of that campaign or that user.
You mentioned a very interesting point about the skill sets. When you start looking at sort of programmatic and start looking at all the acronyms and then the tech stacks and things like that, how do you go about actually finding the people to run all this tech? Because you need almost a PhD just to run DoubleClick. Not quite, but or a social mantic. How do we go about getting the skills for this?
So I think it's a process. When Google AdWords started out, nobody understood how you can buy media from an auction. They didn't get it. They were like, what the hell? Why should I pay my auction? It's a fixed price, right? Why should I pay an auction? I remember even 2 years back, I was explaining to clients that, it's not a fixed price. They're like, what's the price to be on number one listing that one? I said, it's not like that. And it took some time for people to get over that, as advertisers and as agencies. But I think that we'll have to basically invest in a lot of training. I don't think you're going to get a ready-made RTB rockstar out of any digital marketing course or out of college. It's going to be something that they have to be trained on. I think Google does a good job of training us on the platforms. Sociomantic is going to do again a lot of training with our team on that stuff. Medium Mind does stuff. So we work with all the platforms to ensure that the guys at our end are constantly upgraded onto that, because they have certain skill sets, like they've got the analytic ability to understand how an auction buy works. They have to just transpose that into a display environment. And similarly, one big piece of programmatic is the creative. So, because creative is suddenly a lot more involved. Rather than having one banner campaign or maybe just 3 themes running, you're going to have a lot more buckets created on the fly. You're going to have a lot of creative that gets modified on the fly. And I think that's a really big challenge, that how do you get creative completely involved into the programmatic space. So I think that's something which, so like for example, DoubleClick has got the DoubleClick Studio that allows creative guys to directly upload the banners and create a creative asset library that can directly be imported into their campaigns. But that's really ideal. But to get that done, it's far more difficult to ensure that everyone's on the same page and gets that done and execute in that manner. So the technology is there, it's building up, but it's going to take a bit of while to get everything going, I think, as one cohesive thing. And my fear is that when we get that going, there'll be something more to catch up with.
So Saurabh, what does it take to get these guys to convince you to scale up your programmatic buys?
So I think that's like answering the holy grail, right? But I think if I have to develop more confidence, not that we don't do it, but if I had to develop more confidence, I would ideally look at, and I'm telling you, the early adopters of programmatic are actually guys who've used AdWords before, who've used Facebook, and those are the guys who jump onto the bandwagon and say, we want to try this as well. But I think the proof of the pudding lies in the fact that if I was to get a dashboard on programmatic, which tells me by publisher, by property, what am I getting, so I could switch on, switch off, whatever I wanted and optimize it. Today I do not see the optimization happening at an advertiser level, right? And there's no view on that, as I was saying earlier. So once that, the other is, I differ a little bit from Diana on the user angle, because we as marketeers, of course, are after users, but users who are in that mindset. So for example, the same user, and I would take a traditional example to kind of say this, the same user could be watching the India-Pakistan cricket match, right? And the same user could be watching a soap television serial, right? I would rather want, if I'm a youth brand, to connect with him when he's watching cricket rather than when he's consuming some other content. So the same way it works on the web or on mobile. It's not about that user so much as it is about his journey and what he's doing at that moment when I would want to catch him, which is more contextual in nature. So that piece is still there.
Well, can you hear me? Yes. Yeah, I have to defer as well on that, right? Because, well, basically, yes, if you know that a user is watching that match at this specific publisher and you would like to approach that user in that moment because you think, based on what, that is another question, that this user is going to convert in this website, right? How do you know? Based on, because at the end programmatic is like economics, right? There's a history behind, there is mathematics there, and then you can make predictions. How do you make those predictions, right? Because through programmatic, it's based on all this data that has been collected, treated, and of course analyzed automatically in order to set one bid. Can be in this publisher, but in anyone. How do you do this, like kind of manually or?
Well, not today in terms of television, but I would think if measurement is a big deal on internet and on mobile, then I would think if I was buying a user instead of a medium, then you have to, I have to have a view of that to be able to say that this is the one that works for me versus the other. So I'm with you on a publisher versus user, but I'm not with you if I do not get the view of that.
One last thing. So you mentioned the optimization piece. You want to see the publishers, which one's working, which one's not working. Surely isn't that the role of the agent? So let's say you took on an agency, that would be their role. Or if you don't have the time to do that, obviously you wouldn't.
Well, the entire logic behind programmatic, I thought, was doing away with a lot of manual intervention and just limiting it to optimization. IOs get automated, a lot of things get automated, right? So, I mean, I'm a big fan of Facebook advertising, not because I do not end up spending a lot more there, and not because the algorithm does not figure out that I'm spending so much and it gets, it gets working against me at times. But I think the thing that I love about it is it's do it yourself. And that gives me that confidence, saying a lot of things I control when I'm spending. And that's very, very important for frugal marketers like me, wherein for every dime that I'm putting in, I want to figure out if it's around performance marketing, I want to figure out is it doing to my overall objective that I have in mind.
So in the interest of time, I've probably got to call it to a close, but I just wanted to chuck it to the floor. Is there any questions for the panel on the floor?
So we just started dabbling in programmatic buying, and to be very honest, now this is a subset of what inventory I'm actually getting from that. So keeping that besides, very honest, we tied it with a very large campaign. We put a lot of money behind it, but when I finally looked at what I was trying to achieve, my achievement from advertiser side is that if I'm putting in $100, I would probably look at the channel which is giving me most impressions, better CTRs. That's what I'm trying to achieve. I didn't see any flip side to it. I saw flat CTRs. So the question still remains the same. Why would I do it? Or maybe is there any other way I should evaluate it? Or is there something that we are not doing right from our end?
Okay. The question around CTR is quite tricky, actually. The reason why it is tricky is because when you're buying, let's say, directly, right, you have a very controlled environment and a very controlled exposure that you're doing, and it's only limited to somebody who's coming onto that particular website. And the publisher has pretty much all the controls in terms of ensuring that you get X CTR performance. And the thing with CTR is a derived metric. Right? X number of impressions, X number of clicks by X number of impressions get the CTR. So if I drop my impressions and my clicks remain steady, your CTR kind of goes up. On the programmatic side of things, what normally advertisers optimize towards is not CTR, but the outcome. Are you looking at better quality traffic coming on your site, or are you looking at a sustained cost in terms of cost per transaction? Most demand-side platform technologies are not designed to optimize towards CTR. The one big reason that I discovered in one of the engineering calls I had about a month ago said that the reason why we're not optimizing towards CTR is what if that site has a bot, right? And there's an impression bot and there's a click bot which is triggering constantly on that website. And by the time the algorithm catches up, it has spent a lot of money realizing, hey, this site CTR was amazing, so I need to show more banners on this. So the way you should use a demand-side platform should be always focused on optimizing on the outcome and not look at intermediary metrics such as CTR to say, evaluate performance. In most cases, DSP CTRs would always be lower than what you're doing on direct buys or what you're doing on networks. Purely because direct buys and networks are all siloed buys, whereas this is a much larger scale, and you need to tweak the right metrics properly. So it's known for people using programmatic that CTRs would be always lower. But then the end performance, which is, let's say, a cost per sale or cost per transaction, would also be equally lower than all the other channels that you're operating on. So you need to shift your focus away from CTR and look at the end outcome that you want to achieve using technology.
Okay, so I've just, one more quick question.
Suddenly CTR will keep going up. Programmatic on the other side is trying to achieve an end goal in terms of whatever CPL, etc. metric, and you'll still get efficiencies in terms of those costs, right? But I think the power of programmatic doesn't necessarily even lie there. It lies in the fact that you can create multiple segments automatically on the fly, right? So what you can start doing is you can start segmenting your user set to say this is a guy who travels every month, this is a guy who travels. So what you are essentially saying is that that's hygiene. No, no. So what I'm trying to say is not hygiene, right? What I'm trying to say is that there are more segmentation, more intelligence that can be built. And now you have a mechanism where you can actually do a technology-built integration with programmatic exchanges and buy inventory based on that intelligence. See, CTRs fundamentally are an engagement metric, right? They are actually not a function of the inventory at all, right? I mean, sure enough they are if there is a bot or whatever. But if we removed all of that and said that this is all hygiene and we are going to get X whatever, right? It's fundamentally a interaction rate, right? So whatever you are showing, is it exciting to enough users? So say for example, and I'll give a very crude example, right? Hayat says that I sell rooms at 15,000 rupees a night. Tomorrow Hayat decided that I'm going to give it out for free. Your CTRs are naturally going to go through the roof, right? Now this is an interaction because of the offer, because of the creative itself. So a lot of intelligence that you can do on programmatic actually starts from the fact that it is automated. You can create all of these segments and you can hyper segment. You can create multiple thousands of creators, which tweaks the message slightly, right? So it talks to the guy who uses, I don't know, I mean, your, say, business class suite or whatever, in a slightly different way than the guy who's used the lowest end of that spectrum. So
Yeah, just don't want to cut you here. You can take it offline. If the panel is not required, we can just cut this short. Sorry, but because I think people have to leave for some flights and also, like, if there's another question for us, then great. Otherwise, we'll just catch over coffee.
Yeah, so we're done for today, but thank you very much for the panel.